Okay, so someone hands you an amusement park. Not a bounce house rental business, the real thing. Steel roller coasters twisting against the sky, the smell of funnel cake drifting across the midway, kids screaming with genuine joy on their first drop, families walking through the gates from opening to close, every single one of them handing over money for the privilege of being terrified and delighted at the same time. It feels like the happiest business on earth. Pure joy, manufactured at scale, and sold by the ticket. It is not that simple. Owning an amusement park is one of the most capital-intensive, insurance-exposed, and safety-regulated businesses in all of entertainment, because you are operating machinery specifically designed to move human bodies at high speed and high force, for fun, thousands of times a day, every single day the park is open, and the margin for error in that equation is essentially zero. There are amusement park operators who built entertainment empires spanning dozens of properties and generations of family memories. And there are parks that expanded aggressively, took on enormous debt to fund it, and collapsed under that weight the moment attendance softened for even a couple of seasons. Here's the thing about this business. The rides are almost never what actually determines whether you make money. Let's be clear about what you're actually buying, because amusement park covers several very different business models. A major destination theme park, the kind operated by Disney or Universal, functions today as an integrated resort and intellectual property business, with hotels, dining, retail, and licensed characters surrounding the rides themselves, generating revenue streams that go far beyond a simple admission ticket. A regional amusement park, the category that includes chains like Six Flags and Cedar Fair, draws primarily from a several-hour driving radius, operates seasonally in most climates, and competes heavily on thrill rides and season pass value rather than multi-day destination tourism. A smaller, independently owned fixed-location park, often family-run for generations, operates on a completely different scale, usually without the marquee steel coasters that define the bigger chains, surviving instead on local loyalty, birthday parties, and school trip business. And a traveling carnival is not really a fixed-asset business at all, it's closer to a mobile logistics operation, moving rides from fairground to fairground on trucks, with an entirely different cost and revenue structure. This script focuses mainly on the regional amusement park model, the version most people picture when they imagine actually owning a park with real thrill rides in it. Let's talk about what it actually costs to build one. A single major steel roller coaster, the kind that becomes a park's headline attraction and drives ticket sales on its own, can cost anywhere from $10 to $25 million to design, manufacture, and install, and the largest, most elaborate coasters in the industry have pushed well past that range. A regional park with any real reputation needs several of these headline attractions, plus dozens of smaller rides, flat rides, kiddie rides, water attractions, meaning the ride inventory alone at an established park can easily represent hundreds of millions of dollars in replacement value. Land acquisition and site development add substantially more, because a park of any real size needs enough acreage for parking, queue infrastructure, and future expansion, and unlike a lot of businesses in this series, that land has to be specifically engineered, graded, and prepared to support the kind of specialized foundation work that a 200-foot steel structure moving people at 60 miles an hour actually requires. Before you open the gates, you also need infrastructure that most guests never think about at all. Ride safety engineering is the single biggest hidden cost category in this entire industry, because every ride requires not just the manufacturer's original engineering certification but ongoing structural inspection systems, redundant braking and restraint mechanisms, and in most states, third-party regulatory inspection before it's ever allowed to open to the public. Queue infrastructure, meaning the physical infrastructure that manages thousands of people standing in line safely, with shade, with crowd control barriers, with virtual queue technology increasingly replacing physical lines, is a substantial and often underestimated line item on its own. Emergency and medical infrastructure is mandatory at this scale too, because a park drawing tens of thousands of guests a day needs on-site medical staff, defibrillators, and emergency response capability comparable to a small municipality, not a retail business. And employee housing is a real and growing cost at many regional parks, because seasonal amusement park labor increasingly relies on programs bringing in workers from outside the immediate area, including international exchange visitor programs, which means the park itself often has to provide or subsidize housing for a workforce that only exists for a few months a year. Now let's talk about what it costs to run the thing every single season, because an amusement park's operating costs are unusually concentrated, similar to the seasonal businesses we've covered elsewhere in this series, but with a liability profile that's genuinely unique. Staffing is the first major challenge, because a park that might run with a skeleton maintenance crew in the off-season can require several thousand seasonal employees, ride operators, ride mechanics, food service, security, guest services, the moment the season opens, and training that staff on ride-specific safety procedures every single year is a real and repeating cost, not a one-time expense. Insurance is the second major category, and it's genuinely one of the most difficult and expensive insurance profiles in all of commercial business, because liability coverage for a business that operates machines specifically designed to accelerate, drop, and spin human beings at speed is a specialized underwriting problem few insurers want any part of. And a single serious ride incident can affect not just that specific park's insurance costs but the entire industry's underwriting environment. For years afterward. Ride maintenance and inspection is the third major category, because unlike most machinery, amusement rides require documented, often daily, sometimes multiple times per day inspection routines before operation, plus scheduled deep maintenance during the off-season that can involve completely disassembling major structural components. Food, beverage, and merchandise supply chain rounds out the major cost categories, because unlike a lot of hospitality businesses, a park has to provision for unpredictable daily attendance swings driven almost entirely by weather, meaning inventory and staffing for food service has to flex dramatically day to day in a way that's genuinely difficult to plan around efficiently. Here's where the revenue model gets genuinely interesting, because like the ski resort industry we covered earlier in this series, it has fundamentally shifted over the past 15 years. For most of the industry's history, the core transaction was the single-day gate ticket, priced individually, with parks competing on ticket price and how many new rides they'd added that season. Today, the dominant revenue strategy at most major regional chains runs through season pass and membership products, recurring subscription-style payments that convert what used to be unpredictable, weather-dependent daily ticket revenue into a large pool of prepaid or recurring annual revenue collected well before the season even opens. This is a genuinely different business than selling single-day admission, because a season pass holder who visits the park 8 times in a summer generates far more in-park spending across those visits than a single-day visitor ever would, even though the per-visit ticket revenue is dramatically lower. In-park spending itself, food, beverage, merchandise, games, and premium experiences like skip-the-line passes, frequently generates as much or more total revenue per guest than the admission ticket did in the first place, which is precisely why modern park design increasingly treats the walk from one ride to the next as its own retail and dining opportunity rather than simply transit space. Group sales, corporate event bookings, and school trip business round out the picture, providing a meaningful, somewhat weather-resistant revenue stream that doesn't depend entirely on individual families deciding to visit on any given Saturday. Let's build the two honest scenarios. In a good year, a new headline attraction, a major new coaster that gets real regional media coverage, drives a genuine attendance surge, season pass sales hit record numbers during the prior winter's early renewal window, weather cooperates through the peak summer weekends that make or break the entire season, and in-park spending per guest climbs as premium experiences gain adoption. A well-run regional park in a strong season might generate healthy double-digit operating margins once the massive fixed costs of insurance, staffing, and maintenance are covered, with season pass revenue providing a stable floor that reduces the business's total dependence on single-day walk-up traffic. In a bad year, a rainy summer suppresses attendance across the handful of peak weekends that typically generate a disproportionate share of annual revenue, meaning a few bad Saturdays can meaningfully damage full-year results in a way that would be unthinkable for most retail businesses, and if a serious safety incident occurs anywhere in the industry, even at a different company's park entirely, the resulting media coverage and regulatory scrutiny can suppress attendance and complicate insurance renewal for operators who had nothing to do with the incident. Because fixed costs, insurance premiums, maintenance obligations, seasonal staffing commitments, don't meaningfully shrink just because a few key weekends got rained out, a genuinely bad season can turn what looked like a healthy business into a serious cash flow problem with very little warning. The clearest real-world illustration of what happens when this business gets over-leveraged is the story of Six Flags. During the 1990s and 2000s, Six Flags aggressively expanded through debt-financed acquisition, buying up regional parks across the country and taking on licensing deals for major entertainment characters to differentiate its properties, financing much of that growth with substantial corporate debt while betting on continued attendance growth to service it. When attendance growth slowed and the broader economy weakened in the years leading up to 2009, the company found itself carrying more than $2.4 billion in debt that its actual park-level cash flow could no longer comfortably support. Six Flags filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in June of 2009, one of the largest bankruptcies in the history of the amusement park industry, and was forced to restructure its entire capital structure, wiping out much of its existing equity value before eventually emerging from bankruptcy the following year under new ownership and a dramatically reduced debt load. The parks themselves never stopped drawing visitors, and the rides never stopped running. The debt taken on to expand faster than the underlying seasonal, weather-dependent cash flow could reliably support is what actually broke the company's balance sheet, a structural echo of exactly the pattern that took down American Skiing Company in the ski resort industry around the same broader economic period. Now here's the twist that explains why sophisticated operators have restructured this entire industry around a fundamentally different strategy over the past decade and a half. The rise of season pass and membership products across the major regional chains exists specifically to solve the structural problem that broke companies like Six Flags in 2009, converting a business that used to be almost entirely dependent on unpredictable, weather-sensitive single-day attendance into one with a real recurring revenue base collected months in advance, smoothing out exactly the kind of seasonal cash flow volatility that made the pre-2009 debt structure so fragile. This is the same diversification logic that shows up throughout this series, converting a revenue stream that's dangerously concentrated and unpredictable into something closer to a subscription business, except here the mechanism is a season pass rather than a real estate portfolio or a multi-resort weather hedge. Layered on top of that, the largest destination parks, the Disneys and Universals of the industry, have pushed the model even further, building surrounding hotels, dining districts, and retail developments that turn a single-day ticket transaction into a multi-day, multi-thousand-dollar destination vacation, capturing far more total spending per visitor than the admission gate alone ever could. Intellectual property licensing is the final piece of this puzzle for the largest operators, because owning or licensing a beloved character franchise doesn't just sell merchandise inside the park, it drives the initial decision to visit that specific park over a competitor's in the first place, turning brand value into a genuine competitive moat that a regional park without recognizable characters simply cannot replicate no matter how good its coasters are. What separates the amusement park operators who build lasting, generational businesses from the ones who repeat the Six Flags story is almost never the quality or thrill level of the rides themselves, since plenty of parks with excellent coasters have gone through painful restructurings. What actually determines the outcome is whether the business diversified its revenue away from single-day, weather-dependent ticket sales into season pass and membership products that can absorb a rained-out summer without collapsing, whether the debt taken on to expand was sized to realistic, weather-adjusted seasonal cash flow rather than an optimistic projection of attendance growth continuing forever, and whether the insurance and safety infrastructure was funded as a genuine operating priority rather than a cost to minimize until something goes wrong. The screams on that roller coaster are real, and so is the joy on a kid's face coming down that first drop. Whether the business built underneath that moment survives long enough to keep manufacturing it for the next 50 years is an entirely different question.